Hey everybody, before we get started, I just remind you this is brought to you by patrons like Adam the Harp, Anga Comics, Architect 10, Bucks G, Carlos, Qua, Jeremy Vasquez, Kylie Denton, Legendary Boss Hunter, Liam Kessler, Regent Raptor, Rogue Robin, Shawnee P, some guy named Bob. Send us on over to our 723 and Zach Reed. If you like what we do, want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early on for the goodies, and it helps us out. Thank you for your support, everybody. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Look FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll 5 stars or other stars. Though, did I do a video on the 4 stars for Summer 1? Whatever. Anyway, you're not here to talk about Summer Martha. Or are you? You're not. Anyway, hi, this is Wanted. It's back again. We're gonna have a tense few weeks. Actually, honestly, we're gonna have a pretty busy chunk of time. Gonna have to, once he wants to do all these wanteds, he's gonna have to bust his balls on this. Starting early next year. Can you believe that's so close? Anyway, we're not here to talk about 2021 yet. We're talking about technically the last banner of 2020, because the other one doesn't start until New Year's. We can talk about the Christmas banner and Bradamante. So if this is your first time checking out FGO Wanted, first of all, shame on you. Why didn't you check us out sooner? But we're going to talk about Bradamante. And the format of this we usually follow is we talk about a character's real life history, we talk about their lore with a capital L and fate, talk about their mechanics, what they do in the game. Some people do only pull for mechanics, or at the very least are intrigued with like, oh, well, I actually need a servant who does some of that stuff. I can do some spins. And then we talk about their rarity, how frequently their raid-ups are. Obviously, so, hey, spoilers for that bit. Bradamante is permanent. After her banner ends, you can be spooked by her at any time. After the banner ends. That's almost always how they do it. You can still get her even when she's not on raid-up, but spooks are very hard to plan for. I know they happen a decent amount, but, the probability is weird. So I don't think there's any much more to hold back here. We should probably go ahead and get into some of that story stuff. So before we talk about Bradamante specifically, I need to outline to you the 3 matters of medieval literature. And this is a concept that basically there were 3 big matters that someone should concern themselves with, and a lot of this stuff bled over into later Renaissance era literature where a lot of this stuff comes in. But basically there were 3 matters. There was the matter of Rome, as it was called, and that's basically the entire quote-unquote canon of classical mythology, including the sequence of Iliad, Odyssey, Aeneid. Because, once you get down a few hundred years later, that's still normal. That's all the same thing. Never mind, those were written hundreds of years apart, if not thousands? I'd have to double check my math. There might be 1,000 in there. So that's the matter of Rome. The matter of Britain is the Arthurian mythos, basically, along with the general mythological kings of Britain and all that stuff. And then there's the matter of France, also sometimes called the Carolinian cycle. This has mostly to do with Charlemagne and his paladins and that kind of historical founding of France, and is where the material that Bradamante appears in is drawn from. I don't want to say that specifically she appears in the original cycle, because I don't actually think so. I think it wasn't until the actual, like I said, the later Renaissance poems and operas that she appeared. But that's where we start, the matter of France. Stuff like the Song of Roland and other various medieval epic poems, which specifically lead us to several Italian poems. And specifically the ones where she appears are Orlando Innamoratio, or Orlando in Love, and Orlando Furioso, Frenzy of Orlando. And if you're curious who this Orlando guy is, that's the Italian version of Roland. I don't know why there's an O in front, but yeah, it's that guy. So you can also, by the way, spell Bradamante, Bradamant, with no E at the end, etc. So, yeah, that's our origin level. She's one of the paladins of Charlemagne, a female Christian knight, an actual, frontline fighter, one of the paladins, a peer of Charlemagne, on the same level as Roland, Orlando. Astolfo is a heavy character as well. Also got a brother, who in the poems is called Rinaldo, but is Rinaldo de Montauban, one of the major characters. So she's tied into characters that already existed. Rinaldo, or Rinaldo as he's called in the Italian, already existed in the medieval French literature. So they they did what fan fiction writers love to do, and they're like, "God, that guy's got a sister. She's cool. She's just like him. She's a knight. She does stuff." So Orlando in Love, because it's easier for me to say than the full Italian name, is unfortunately unfinished. It covers a lot of elements. The main plot is about. Also, yeah, I know it's weird. It's about a girl called Angelica, who is the daughter of the king of Cathay, where Cathay is somewhere in China. Yeah, that's the Mongolia, China upper area. So, yeah, I know she's called Angelica, but she's at the very least, Central Asian, if not outright Chinese. It's like Aladdin. They don't know geography down there, okay? Not even in the Renaissance. So there are various tournaments, fights, stuff like that, and the through line through this one and through the sequel / fan continuation, Orlando Furioso, Bradamante's main plot line, which you will hear referenced a lot in Fate, is that she falls in love with a Saracen knight called Ruggerio, who is a major character in the two epics as well, a part of a supporting character, running through line. There's a lot of ensemble cast in these poems, actually, by the way. It's very interesting. But they fall in love, but they can't marry because he is a Muslim and she is a Christian. Don't worry, they get that worked out. In Furioso, there's a little bit more of a bigger running theme where Bradamante has to, work out all these things, and she's trying to reunite with Ruggerio. This also puts her involved in the quest for various characters. Like, when Ruggerio is moved, he gets to rescue Angelica, and so on and so forth. Fights the evil wizard Atalante. Not Atalante, but it is spelled similarly. Got some stuff back and forth. This is where there's a lot of trading back and forth of interesting magical artifacts. We'll talk a little bit more about inner lore and her skill set. But the English knight Astolfo is a major character in Furioso as well. That's where we get some of his major elements. And actually, Astolfo borrows the lance, which was wielded by Bradamante, and the hippogriff from her. And she later gets a magic shield, which shows up. So that's kind of where some of those noble phantasms come from. A lot of back and forth thing. And it comes to a happy conclusion at the end, basically, where Ruggerio renounces his Islamic ways and converts to Christianity, and they can get married. And then their marriage forms a noble house, the House of Este, who were patrons to those guys who wrote those poems. Gee, I wonder how that worked. But basically, after these two poems and various opera adaptations, etc., a lot of works together. Because there was, the kind of star-crossed lovers thing, and also she was a Christian heroine in the Renaissance period, was subject of a lot of art and popular culture, and by all accounts, a pretty proactive female heroine. Her prospective love gets kidnapped by an evil sorcerer. What does she do? She wanders around in the woods, falls in a hole, meets the ghost of Merlin, gets a magic ring, punches an evil wizard. She accomplishes her own goals, not necessarily, while also being a helpful supporting character to other knights doing other things. Very bold, strong character. The concept of the white-feathered knight, stands in her own opposite from her brothers, who do stuff as well. The whole 9 yards. And I think the only other thing we need to talk about, which will dovetail into the lore in a second, is that what these epic poems did was they, not exactly seamlessly, but they blended together the matter of Britain and France. We've already talked about in some other one-its, if you listen to them, or some other Let's Talk FGOs, about how, groups like the French kind of got a hold of some of the stuff from the matter of Britain and added their own spin on it, adding the brave Sir Lancelot, etc. And then that kind of dovetailed into further cyclings. Galahad arises from a literary need over Lancelot because of reasons. But in these poems, Merlin shows up. There are connections to the mythic kings of England. This is where we see some of those drawing connections to swords being similar to other swords and stuff like that. It's a whole thing. So that kind of flows together. So in Fate, all that stuff is mostly true. She's real big on Ruggerio still. She is a Lancer, even though she's not technically using her lance right now. She's using her shield, because Astolfo currently has borrowed both her lance and her hippogriff. I know, it's funny. So, by the way, she could also probably qualify as a rider. She fits in with the likes of, Charlemagne, Astolfo, Roland, other characters who are in the Paladins who haven't shown up yet. One of the, half a dozen guys who didn't have names until these later fan fictions, basically, in the Renaissance. She's going to be a major character, obviously, in the upcoming Samba event, because that's where her banner premieres. But we'll also probably see her in, interludes and future stuff. Is she in future story content? As of this moment, I don't know. We'll have to see. But there is also a relationship, a very trolling relationship, because it's Merlin, between her and Merlin, where Merlin is apparently, or has advised her in spirit form before, which is super cool for her, but Merlin is probably just being a goofus. I don't think there's really any other detail, unfortunately. But, she'll be a major upcoming character in the story. She'll appear. Got stuff to do. And has a decent relationship web, I should say, with a lot of the characters who appear also. Because the matter of France is also tied into the matter of Rome. I believe Hector is supposed to be an ancestor of Ruggiero, and Durandal is Durandina, Hector's spear. So, there's a lot of interesting mythological blending when you get down to this later period that we'll see some relationship in Fate, because Fate loves that stuff. Alright, let's talk mechanics. Alrighty, so Bradamante is a 5-star Lancer. Talked about that earlier. She is permanent. And, actually, yeah, let's start with the deck. We'll circle back around to those main stats. But the interesting thing here is her deck and NP. So she's got a quick arts buster style, which is not overly common. Most Lancers, like a big chunk of Lancers, have 2 quick, 2 buster. It's not the rarest combo, though, but it is certainly a smaller percentage have that set up. And a lot of them have arts NPs. So that can be a little interesting. And in terms of quick NPs, she is the only 5-star with a quick AoE NP for Lancers, mind you. It's really weird. Though, there is also still no Lancer. Hold on, I'm looking at the stats right now. I don't believe my eyes, but my eyes are telling me that there's no 5-star Lancer with an Arts NP, period. Maybe that's why there's so many Arts Lancer welfares. But yeah, so in terms of Lancers and 5-star Lancers in particular, Bradamante fills a particular niche. You will not find any other 5-star doing the exact stuff she does here. And in some ways, you can think of her as kind of a 5-star, maybe equivalent to... I would probably lean more towards Valkyrie, because... Let me double check here. Valkyrie. Valkyries have... Oh, no, those are also quick. Okay, so I think all of the 4-stars we currently have are double quick, double buster. I guess so in that case, that would probably make Lancer Yume Ren the last summer welfare NJP, probably more like the 4-star free version of Bradamante. Anyway, so if you care about niches and certain combos of cards and attributes and stuff, Bradamante is fairly unique. There aren't a lot of Lancers like her, which may suit your needs there mechanically. So in terms of the stats, Bradamante has actually a decent attack. It's not the highest, but she's only behind a few units, most of whom are limited or story locked. But she has the second highest HP in Lancers currently. So, and I mean, it's a significant chunk below a Reshkigal, but for her attack not being absolutely the worst, she's, I would argue pretty firmly in the middle of the pack. Her and Artoria Lancer, the normal one, are right neck and neck in terms of stats. Artoria has a smidge more attack and slightly less HP, so they're kind of the middle block, right? So, she's not the lowest out of attack. Keeping in mind, one of those ones with low attack is Summer Tamamo, who is a big hitter. But she has a pretty decent HP, like I said, number 2 in the class currently. Definitely built more towards endurance, but not shirking on that attack, I would say, necessarily. So, probably she was designed a little bit earlier, and they just figured out when to throw her in, because, 2 hits arts cards, not great. 0.7 though on a 4-hit quick card and a 5-hit extra, so if you do like AAQ or even possibly AQQ, you'll get some charge up and stuff. So I mentioned her NP was quick. Let's actually talk about that one. So it's only 5 hits. I know that's not ideal for your dual Scotty systems, but it's multi-hit. Deals damage to all enemies, so it's an AoE. 60% chance to stun. Reduces enemies' critical chance by a flat 20% for 3 turns. Pretty decent effects there. Got some stall action, even though she's majority quick. And has a self-NP steroid of 20% baseline, which is overcharge based, which is actually pretty decent. Quick cards already have some of the highest attack multipliers, the quick NPs, I should say, because the quick card itself is a lower multiplier. But with her attack stat not being, like, the worst out of it, and that self-steroid, that's a decent amount of damage. You can definitely use certain supports, not just Scotty, but in general supports who is synergized with quick, to actually spice that up a decent amount. So, for AoE anyway, she'll hit pretty decently, and enemies that survive have an over half chance to be stunned, and their critical rate will be reduced by 20% for 3 turns. Pretty decent if you've got like a couple of annoying ads you want to boop and then get into the boss. So I don't think there's anything really tech-wise right there. It's a pretty straightforward, it does like 3 things. That's pretty good for an AoE NP. There are some characters who basically do nothing with an AoE NP. So it's not shirking, but it's not overly complex either. It's pretty direct. You smash guys with a shield. And yes, she shows her butt in it. I don't know. So this is a weird thing. I'm going to tangent slightly about the mechanics. I probably should have brought this earlier, but like, you're going to notice my thoughts on this in that I don't know why Bradamante is such like a sleeper. Like, nobody talks about her. The only thing people talked about was, quote unquote, the butt shot in her NP. And nothing else, even though I think she's actually got some interesting skill kits. And like, aren't you guys all about quick now? You know, I know everybody just goes, I've already gotten my, Lancer's Berserker lot. I don't need anything else. Whatever. It's just like, I don't know. It's like this, and Shang-Yu definitely seems like a part of a concerted effort in this year of FGO to like bring units that are majority quick focused up to snuff. And she actually does some interesting things. And while I don't want to say that her like material needs are great, there's a lot of metals in there. With the exception of her level 9 skills, to flash forward to that, most of them need older mats, It's not the worst. And it's really, I find it really weird that was the big takeaway, that people were, like, shocked or grossed out or whatever, that she has a fairly interesting dynamic animation attack, right? Like, that's not usually an angle you see the NP animation from. Honestly, as cool as it is, the front-facing sprite is a dime a dozen now. It's cheap as hell. And let me tell you, as a guy who, maybe it's just because 2 years ago people didn't understand that horny gacha games exist, but now 2 years later, as a guy who has played several gacha games on various levels, there are games that are way hornier than this. FGO is a game still based on a franchise that started with porn, and is now, still the writers remember that, like, sex and violence and stuff exists. I don't know, it's weird. We'll see what happens when people think about it or are reminded. Anyway, let's talk about her skills, now that we've had our slight detour there. So, first skill, it's a pretty basic double steroid. It's 3 turns, 20 to 30%. Not the best, not the worst. But I think it's pretty important. It has a low cooldown when you get it going. This is, another 20 to 30% effectiveness on your NP, more effectiveness on Stargen and NP up out of those 2 quick cards, which should be pretty good, and helps shore up your arts cards. This kind of steroid overall is pretty good, and it's pretty good for servants who have mixed decks to get the most out of them. Second skill is Knight of White Feathers. This gives her a Self-Guts, 1k to 3k, 1 time 3 turns. Not the best, but they don't, like, super stretch the cooldown for it. And then she's got a increase your defense for 3 turns, 20 to 30%. That's pretty solid. So, this is a, desperation skill. You're going to take some hits in the next couple of turns. You're worried she might go out. You can pop your def to actually, like, make it so that it's less likely that she jobs out, and then if she does go, she'll come back with a little bit of HP. She's not done yet. This can be helpful if you're circling around some stuff. And like I said, unlike a lot of gut skills, they don't crazy overinflate the cooldown for this. It's only 6 turn cooldown at its minimum. So that's pretty decent, I think, considering a lot of gut skills are actually quite long cooldowns. Final skill, by the way, I disagree with this translation. Magical Release doesn't feel right. But these stats are taken from Grand Order Wiki. The fake Grand Order Wiki's translation is like thaumaturgical sanctification. It's like incredibly grossly overcomplicated. It should just be like magic canceling. Cancel magic, right? It's an effect I mentioned earlier, some of that stuff she's got. One of her noble phantasms, she's got a magic ring that cancels all magecraft. This skill is an extension of that. So, it's really weird. Anyway, we'll see what the official localization is, and hopefully it's not too pretentious. This is a targetable battery for one ally, which also removes their debuffs on a 5-turn cooldown. Yeah, the battery's only 10 to 20%, but this means if you bring a buddy with K-Scope, she can get them started. It removes their debuffs, though, on a 5-turn cooldown. That's pretty amazing. Like, that's a really good skill. And unless you've only got, like, an NP1 who's already full, for the most part, you're not going to cry about 10% or 20% NP and removing debuffs every 5 turns. And also, I would argue that, while 20% is better than 10%, the remove debuffs is really the thing, so you don't have to necessarily level this one if you just want a free debuff clear. Though, obviously, like I said, 5-turn cooldown. You actually put some effort into that. So, this is a pretty interesting skill. So, I feel like, with Lost Belt 3, while it wasn't as hard as people made it out to be, there was definitely something to be said for, like, gosh, I really wanted more debuff clears and more buff removals. Here you go. Here's another debuff clear. That'll help you out there. For passives, she's a Lancer, so she just has magic resistance, but it is A, so she's pretty debuff resilient herself, in addition to the ability to remove them, because obviously since that third skill is targetable, you can hit herself. I mentioned her skill and ascension requirements earlier on the side. You can see them now. They're fairly normal. Depending on whether or not you've been going apeshit with other people's skills, those night medals might be a little spicy. Those feathers might be a little spicy, but they're all older mats, so there's that going for them. The big thing I think you guys should note is that if you actually want to get her to 10-10-10, that 9th level requires not only 18 shells per skill, but also 24 soaps Aurora Steels. Could be a big deal, for those of you coming off some other stuff. Overall, her kit is basic but effective. Like, I would say Bradamante is, in terms of skill kit, a pretty lean and mean unit. She will doot guys AoE. Anybody who lives through the attack has a decent chance to be stunned and has a reduced critical. She has a very decent defense because she's got a big HP pool. She's got that guts and that, like I said, 20 to 30% defense up for 3 turns. Very spicy. So she will resist a decent amount of damage. Her steroid has a low cooldown and is fairly reliable. That will really help you even out. Getting more stars for more crits, getting you more, NP gen on target so you can NP more. A decent number of hit counts, though not the excessive amount some people want. And that third skill is just great utility, guys. I do not want to undersell how important sometimes targetable debuff removal is. Just be like, oh, I don't like those debuffs on that guy. Get rid of those. Well, also having a targetable 10 to 20% battery on a 5-turn cooldown. That's pretty good. I would argue that while she's simple, Bradamante is very modernly designed in terms of her skill kit. Maybe not her base stats and her deck. Well, her deck is different from a lot of Lancers. It's true. If she was a launch Lancer, they probably would have given her 2 Buster cards for some ungodly reason. But her cooldowns are pretty quick, considering she's got a guts and a targetable battery. I know they're not big guts or a big battery, but still. Usually those in the past have overinflated even the cooldown numbers. So she will use her skills pretty frequently. I think she pairs best with quick supporters. Sorry, I was getting there. I was going to say, though, that you probably won't go wrong with a art supporter because of their special features. For instance, I think Tamamo would actually blend very well with Bradamante. With that stun chance, for instance, goes well with Tamamo's charge down effects to stall out enemies from unpleasant NPs. Tamamo's healing helps keep Bradamante's large HP pool up and has that skill cooldown so you can do her skills even more frequently. I don't know if she's perfect for double Scottying, but without necessarily the extra, exploity trying to go super fast, Scotty's still a good support for this. A blend of arts and quick cards herself, improve NP damage, improve quick effectiveness, get her up and going, give her a little extra resiliency, because I will say one thing you should note is that Bradamante doesn't have any hard defenses. That 30% defense up and that guts will absorb a lot of hits, but they are not, the blocks against certain attacks, which will always kill. Like, if somebody targets her with a neutral damage single target NP, she's probably done. Still, just because those do so much damage, right? You'd probably want to layer defensive debuffs on that if you didn't already. So you want to watch out for that kind of stuff. You can go with half supporters. I wouldn't say Osakabe Hime necessarily blends because while she does do that quick buff and Hime does max HP up, her, like, critical and buster focus buffs don't necessarily mesh with Bradamante. I mean, Merlin's not a bad support for what he does. I don't think he's necessarily the perfect support because she's not going to really capitalize on that hero creation like other characters will. But when it else fails, you can use Waver. 50% battery, damage plus, damage cut. Damage cut really synergizes with her own defense up if you need it, if you're in danger. And she will proc crits. I think ideally with only those 2-hit arts cards, you really want those arts cards to crit. Consider blending her with other units that help her with that. Or just anybody who has synergy. Again, I would say, since she does not necessarily have any, like, huge damage steroids or huge damaging NPs or skills like that, like she doesn't have any extra crit focus, I would say you should think of Bradamante is, as usual, like a wave clear and a tank, basically, for other units. Like, she's gonna blow up adds who are with a boss and delay a boss action. She will live through fights in a clutch. She can support allies by giving them that debuff removal and stuff, and helping reduce enemy crit chance. And may even, live through some violence to just do some normal face card damage at the end. But if you're facing a boss, you're probably bringing a dedicated boss killer, unless she's got, like, some crazy high bonus damage or something. So you can make it work. CE selection, I mean, obviously, if you can get that skill up, she has a 20% battery, which she can obviously tag on herself, so you can have her K-scope herself to have a turn 1 NP. Do all your steroids. Other than that, I would say anything that increases her quick damage, her quick output, or her NP output. That's where a lot of your damage is going to come from, and you're going to want to hit that harder, right? Like, you're going to want to be able to do more damage on NPs or those 2 quick cards. You might go for, like, a critical up thing, but again, I don't think that's necessarily her focus. What you really want is, when she actually drops that NP, you want it to hit pretty hard, what you're going for. Make sure it's killing all those adds, doing a decent chunk of damage to bosses, etc. And you can get, crazy with it, dealing with a lot of guys with evade that's really annoying. I mean, there are some archers with evades. Try, decapitating bunny if you have it, stuff like that. Get your sure hits or your pierce invuls in there. Otherwise, just go for general focus on NP damage, quick. Well, I would say arts or NP gain is probably your third element there. You want to make sure she's getting enough NP that she can fire on her own, unless you are going, like, whole hog on trying to make Scotty loops work. But again, I don't know if she's got enough hit counts for that with her current damage output. Though again, with a 30%, basically a 30% NP card steroid on her first skill, and a minimum 20% NP damage plus on her NP every time, she will hit harder than you'd think. Just, don't go overboard and don't count on her to, like, blow up a boss right away with an AoE NP. That's not usually how that works without some extra English. So, let's talk about Rarity. I mentioned this earlier, she is permanent after the banner ends, but, there's always the chance that won't happen. So, she's going to show up on Holy Samba Night. She's going to be on a raid-up rotation of Voice and Letter Collection. As I mentioned earlier, she does have an interlude coming. It's just a quartz interlude, but it exists. So that will mean that she's on a summoning campaign for that next year. Again, she's a lady pants, so Valentine's she'll get raid-ups. She will also be on that weird swimsuit and AoE NP only summoning campaign, but that's, a crapshoot. And actually, interestingly enough, she's in the raid-up for Nightingale Christmas rerun, which involves a Stolfo Saber. Yeah, it's a little weird, but I guess it's because they understood that Samba wasn't getting a rerun anytime soon. I don't know. It's pretty funny though. So yeah, like she will have occasional raid-ups, though some of them may feel a little baity, but there are definitely moments, where she'll be available, and of course you can always be spooked. Spook 'em. So, yeah, there's that. Alright, okay, I don't think we have anything further to talk about here. We covered all our bases. Thanks so much for tuning into Wanted. Hope you enjoyed that little test, and I hope you're at least willing to give Bradamante a shot, or at least won't be mad if she shows up permanently. I'm probably not going to go more than like 1 or 2 spins for CEs, but, I'm not going to be upset. She's neat, I just got other stuff to focus on. That's another aspect I could say why maybe people are kind of sleeping on her, is because she is permanent, and she comes between 2 big limited banners, one of which is very meta. But, she does some different things. If you really like Quick, or you do like some Quick Arts hybrid stuff, she can fill some roles that you're gonna have a hard time filling in Lancers, at least in the 5 stars. Like, again, maybe this is like the Zhang Yu comparison, like I feel like she's in that similar vein, but also where a lot of people are just gonna go, but I already have a Zerkalot. Like, a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, I already picked Pavardi on the SR ticket, I don't need Bradamante. But, she does some interesting things, like I said. Keep her in mind. And if you don't get her, well, you've got somewhere you may run who fulfills a similar niche. Free NP5 in like 2 years. Alright, that's the video though. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it. Leave any comments you have down below in the comment section. You can also hit us up on our Discord. That link is as always in the description and on our channel page. If you're new here and haven't already, please subscribe to our channel to get all our latest Wanted and our show, Let's Talk FGO. And even if you're already subscribed, considering that bell for notifications so you always know when we post a new video, like when Omega has to post Wanteds in the middle of the night. Thanks, Aniplex. Or Delightworks, I guess. I don't know. I don't actually know who handles the decision of when to roll stuff out. I just know that Aniplex is supposed to be in charge of the pressing anyway. And announcing, maybe. PR? Anyway, hit that bell for notifications so you always know when we're posting or when we're streaming. It's helpful to you and to us. And consider joining our channel as a membership. Get extra emotes and stuff. And consider supporting us on Patreon. You could have gotten this episode early if you were just a humble patron. Great rates. And so I will see you in the next video, the next Wanted. That'll be around New Year's. Duh. And, yeah. Stay tuned for Let's Talk FGO in the future then, okay? Alright, bye everybody.